I got a sneak peek last week, and I got to understand a little bit of their journey that they are on, how they are using Uncork to achieve their outcomes and their objectives, and some of their lessons learned. So I think you guys are in a treat for today as these individuals speak. So what I'm going to do is first have them introduce themselves, just a little bit about your name, your title, and a little bit of your background would be great. So we'll start with Cody.
Cody Reinhardt. The hardest part will be staying on this chair without falling off, so hopefully that doesn't happen. I'm a vice president at Goldman Sachs. My specialty is in product management, focusing on insurance for this use case. I do a little bit of other things within our personal financial management space within overall wealth. So tax, insurance, and other sort of niche services fall under me.
And I'm Joseph Lowe. I head up product innovation, vice president at Broadridge. I'm responsible for bringing next generation technologies and solutions to our clients in wealth management.
And I'm Guddu Moni. I am part of the asset and wealth management division in JPMorgan Chase, and I head up the process engineering center of excellence there. We have a number of design and automation capabilities under that, and low-code workflow automation is one of the newest ones we've brought on board with Uncork this year. So excited to be here and share some of the color in that journey.
So I get to ask all the easy questions, and I hope all of you are prepping some questions for the end that will challenge this panel. So let me start with the first question, which is, what was the business case to use Uncork, and how are you using Uncork as a platform?
I'll start. So we started, for this use case, we used a few different examples within Goldman, but for this use case, we went out to build an end-to-end digital term life platform. Some of the challenges we were trying to overcome were obviously state regulations. They change a lot depending on what state you're in. Compliance obviously is a huge issue, and then product fit for clients. And then the principles that we went about and what we were looking for in a partner was someone that could stay with this. Client experience was number one. We really wanted this to be seamless from start to finish. And I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end. An end-to-end experience. So you're starting with a Goldman Sachs experience, you're going through some digital advice, ultimately selecting something and moving on to a carrier application. We didn't want people to have handoffs, either human or digital, even though those were options, to get all the way through to a signed application. And we also needed it to coincide with our enterprise applications, which I'll also talk about in a bit. I mentioned compliance, that was key. And some of the components, just to give you some flavor, and it's called protect.ayco.com, AYCO, if you want to look at it. But the front-end experience is completely housed on Uncork. The overall experience is a learning. You can go learn about insurance. You can compare different insurance policies. We have a curated list to match your preferences, and ultimately shop and buy, complete the application all in one shot. Carrier connectivity was also completely important to us, so that to get to the end-to-end, we actually had to go and get carrier buy-in, which Uncork also built on the fulfillment side. So that was key and one of the big challenges we had to get through. And then workflow, being able to manage the things that pop out of as exceptions, which I'll touch on in a little bit. So yeah, term was our first and the transformation of insurance. We're working on annuities and some other stuff now. We'll be able to reuse a lot of what we did on the term application.
That's awesome, Cody. I don't know if I can follow that up.
I talk too much.
I don't know, at Broadridge, we're in the business of digital transformation for wealth management firms, and we do large-scale enterprise-grade transformations front to back. A lot of our capabilities, whether it's in front-end wealth management, portfolio management, back office clearance and settlement, we do all that stuff. And one of the real trends and themes that we're seeing is there's such a need for personalization of kind of the advisor experience, the investor experience. And some of the areas that we struggled with, and one of our main rationales for bringing it on Uncork, is that we started to experience our clients needing more optionality and more configurability in their onboarding journeys specifically. So a good example is, one of the transformations we're doing with a large wealth manager. It's like they wanted very specific, highly customized, but yet modularized onboarding workflows. Being able to support exactly how a client's journey is going to be through the onboarding process was something that we struggled with our existing tools, with our existing capabilities. And so Uncork was the clear partner for us that allowed us to gain that agility in terms of being able to offer industrial strength capabilities, but also in a way that we were able to scale and productize, fairly customized user journeys. And that was and frankly, that was a big, that helped us relieve a lot of pressure when it comes to, hey, what should the product do versus what are the journeys that, a large scale wealth manager needs. So I'd say that's probably the biggest thing that's been a big help for us at Broadridge. The second thing is, I think Uncork's end-to-end enterprise-grade integration capabilities. I sound like a salesperson for Uncork now. Sorry. Is that it also allows us to modernize a lot of our legacy applications. Broadridge has been in the business for like 50 years, doing a lot of really mission-critical software. But a lot of our stuff, has been difficult to modernize and digitize through web experiences and things like that. And Uncork's been a big help for us, and we're using that to incrementally go through some of our most important applications and bring them to modern webland. So it's been great.
When you talk about modernizing legacy, ours was paper file cabinets and FedEx trucks. And that was the starting point. So there was no application involved in that other than the ream of paper.
So the mainframe is a leg up on your.
You had a big advantage there.
So we've had a slightly different kind of business case bringing in Uncork at JPMorgan Wealth Management. I think one of the things that we consistently see, and I think it's pretty common across the marketplace. Generally, you have a technology organization, right, that has a set amount of budget, and there's only so many things that they're going to be able to automate or implement in a given year. And just having been underinvested in technology in past years as well, we've just built up a lot of demand of things we're wanting to change. I think with the examples of paper, fax, like before COVID, it was quite a lot of extremely manual processes going on. So we have this very high demand, and it's often hard to meet that demand with kind of the core technology budget and dollars. So we were really looking for a way to offset that and try to figure out how do we kind of open this up, right, and add more capacity to drive change on a day in, day out. So we haven't necessarily yet hit, a big use case per se, but our hypothesis so far has been, how do we open it up to the citizen developers or kind of the technology-oriented folks in the organization to add and build to that capacity and be able to kind of support, the change at the pace that we need. I think another thing kind of to add on there, I think even looking at the last few years, we've just seen a lot of growth in the wealth management. We've had pretty ambitious targets in terms of acquiring more assets and under management. So what that just basically means is, and especially as a lot of young people are coming out and they're wanting to invest their money in different places, we just see a lot of influx of different ways in which people are looking to invest and manage their wealth. So we needed a product that is going to keep up with that type of agility, where we're seeing a lot of demand and we can kind of respond to it pretty quickly. So I think Uncork kind of fits the bill, at least from a product perspective, in being able to deliver that kind of agility. So that was another big part of our business case to bring in Uncork.
I love how the panel shared such different situations and use cases, but they were all looking and had a similar need, and that the platform was able to support some of the need for your growth. Kind of the follow-up question will be, what have you noticed as being one of the most significant impacts that you have observed now that you have decided to use Uncork and have delivered and developed in using this platform?
I guess we'll keep going in order.
Get-
Yeah, that's fine.
Switch it up. And
So
everything.
from a business perspective, when I talk about term life, it's a fairly complicated process in itself if you've ever applied for insurance. So we were really offering it to old high net worth clients, a low volume, but high face amounts. And we really were, in our business, we specialize in high net worth, but we also have wellness packages which serve broad-based employee populations. So we had all the carrier contacts, we had all the knowledge internally, but we really hit a tipping point of what we could do, literally with people and paper. So we wanted to be able to create something that could scale, across that, to scale that business from very little to a lot, and across many new channels. And to get to those new channels, it had to be digital and it had to be straight through. At the same time, it needed to cater to that high net worth. So it could be a completely client-centric view, going in start to finish, or it could be an advisor-led view where the advisor is really hand-holding the client through the process. So it was able to support both of those use cases. A side effect was, higher quality, reduced NIGOs. Hopefully everyone knows what that is. Not in good order. That was a huge problem, and it creates a tremendous amount of rework, especially when you're dealing with paper, because it's a paper rework cycle. So NIGOs went down to practically nothing because everything was automated. All the validation was built into Uncork. And I already mentioned new channels, but it really allowed us to take something that was a very small part of the business and expand it to anyone that we wanted to sell it to within the firm. So lastly, and specifically to Uncork, was speed to build this, right? You think a lot of people spend millions and years building a platform of this scale. I'll brag a little bit. But it took us 6 months. Literally, it was a thought in January. It was a product at the end of June. And we had approved to launch it after 9 months. So all within a calendar year. We thought of a product, we built it, we launched it. In our first application, somebody had a policy in 2 hours. So we're very proud of that, and Uncork was a huge part of that speed to market.
Looks like there's a question there.
Sure.
Did you use contractors for that, or did you use internal developers that had to learn it?
We used Uncork for everything.
I think for us, I'd say there's 3 main benefits we got. I think if you look at it from the advisor satisfaction, we know that advisors are sort of the backbone of the wealth management industry, and really by creating an integrated experience, by creating really well personalized journeys for onboarding, we were able to have a really high levels of satisfaction with advisors. For a client we were working with, 95% of advisors that were offered the new system chose to use the new system. And for those of us that have worked in the wealth management industry, we know that never happens for advisors. And so that was really good. I think from an investor experience, Uncork allowed us to, really have experiences that were, so that the investors weren't asked things that we already knew, so that things were pre-populated, validations were happening up front, so you weren't getting get 5 pages in and it's like, hey, sorry, we can't do that, or there's some information that's missing. So the investor experience, and being again very, very considered about what to ask and when and what information was populated was really important. And that really helped with investor experience. And the last thing is actually, and it's often missed, is actually the employee experience. The most soul-sucking thing you can have is like getting another JIRA ticket about, can you please update this button or change that label, or can you move this thing up? And I think with codeless technologies like Uncork, you're able to be closer to what the business needs are, what the client needs are, what the solution needs are, and be able to impact those changes in a much more a closer way to what the solution requires than traditional models.
And I think for us, it's been also a combination of things. We've had many tools like RPA and other automation technologies, which we've been on the journey over several years. I think a key part of that was missing is kind of a workflow system which glues many of those components together. You could sort of do point-to-point automation, but I think really having the ability to orchestrate some of those things and kind of glue them all together with the workflow has been really cool and interesting to see. So now we're using this technology in tandem with other things we had already deployed to try to figure out how to build kind of end-to-end solutions. I think another thing that I've seen is a lot of excitement in the organization. We've just brought in Uncork, earlier, like just has been about a year now, and I think, we've probably done upwards of 50, 70 demos just within my organization as well. And it just created a lot of excitement, right? People who see it definitely want to use it. People who use it want a lot more of it. So it's been very interesting from that perspective. And I think one of the things, I find very interesting is that there's a lot of people kind of coming into the organization. And again, right, one of the soul-sucking things for especially younger people is you just come in and you're just told to do repetitive sort of things over and over, oftentimes manual. So this, I think, has created a little bit of an avenue and I think a clear path to see how you can kind of help yourself and do some of that things for yourself. So I think it's created a lot of interest and a kind of a vision on how we can drive some of this change, especially with, technology budgets being low. Like your solution is going to come 24 months from now, right? And you heard that so many times. I think it becomes a little bit deflating. So that I think has been helpful. And the last thing, I think, which I find to be really interesting and, TBD as it kind of proves out, even as we've kind of gone on the agile kind of journey, which we've been adopting over the last several years, agile's still like basically a bunch of mini waterfalls, right? I think what's so cool about technologies like this is the fact that you're not writing kind of requirements and sending it over to someone, even if it's in small pieces. So I think it has a lot of opportunity to disrupt even the agile framework to basically build live, get away from some of the ceremonies or having to write sort of requirements and passing it off in this kind of way. Different people in the cycle are getting involved in the app development piece, and that's changing software development. So it's very interesting to see at a place like JP where we still have a lot of waterfall. We're trying to adopt agile, and then technologies like this are already disrupting the way that's happening. So that's been pretty cool and interesting to see as well.
I couldn't agree more.
So I'm going to switch it up a little bit. I'm giving you a heads up, Guru, that you're going to go first. But a little bit is that it kind of dovetails from what you just said. How do you think about compliance? Because there must be a conflict in some cases when you want to allow more business autonomy while also making sure that it's controlled and meets all the requirements, because we are all in very regulated industries.
Yeah. I think one of the first things when we brought in the tool, right, I think is, you have several sort of concerned stakeholders in the organization. And they've all kind of gone through, I don't know who I was talking with today, but the whole era of UDTs and the proliferation of these apps that, sometimes can go uncontrolled. And, that's a big concern when we kind of think about bringing something in and it's going to be sort of citizen developer or more broadly used. I think that's a concern that, I've heard many times in my organization and at other places. I think, the way we've kind of approached it is to kind of go slow and kind of scale over time. So we've set up a center of excellence in our own team. There's, a center of excellence in our technology counterpart side. There's broader center of excellence at the firm-wide that's sort of defining some of the standards, methods, governance, and figure out what's the right way to do it. So instead of just opening the aperture to everyone who wants to develop in this, we kind of started with, hey, we're going to build for, you have a use case, we're going to start build for you. Over time, now we've kind of expanded that to, we'll build with you. And I think in the future, we'll want to open that aperture a little bit more once the processes are a little bit more, stabilized to basically have people develop independently. I think another thing that really helps is that because we have that center of excellence, any app that gets built, we generally have somebody QC again and be able to make sure that it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. So that's essentially the approach we're taking. We're going after the small to medium use cases, really building all the infrastructure and processes around it, and hoping that over time we can kind of mature to being able to tackle the bigger problems in this kind of federated way.
That was an awesome answer, man. I'd say that it's funny because on one side of the spectrum, anyone can make a Word document and just make a form, and that form ends up being a process on its own. Or anyone can do an Excel spreadsheet and just start emailing it to people every week, and that's a thing. And so there's really a wide gulf from how do you and you can't stop that. People are going to make forms and just, and that's how a lot of paper processes start, right? I think for us at Broadridge, we took a more methodical approach, and we onboarded Uncork as an environment, as a platform within our infrastructure. And we said, hey, this is available now. This is one of the technologies that, where it makes sense, developers, development teams, business teams can use to create value for our clients. And so that's kind of the first thing, kind of doing it right, setting up the infrastructure, setting up the COEs, setting up the necessary kind of support models for that. And I think from there, though, it has to be done in a collaborative manner. A lot of the data, a lot of the processes that Broadridge supports are very sensitive, PII, all that kind of stuff. And so it does have to be done collaboratively with the appropriate, compliance partners, kind of legal, all that stuff, right? I don't think Uncork sidesteps that stuff, I think it helps reduce the kind of the initial heartburn of like setting up the infrastructure and all the architectural stuff.
Yeah, this one's near and dear to me. So I start with our compliance team was very skeptical of Uncork, just the newness of it, the automation of it, the cloud-basedness of it, all of that made them very nervous. And I joked that I spent more time with lawyers than I did with developers on this thing. And that's not far from the truth. And balancing what you said, we were bringing them an everything bagel with cream cheese on it, and they wanted to give you burnt toast with nothing on it that you could scrape off the crust. So we were trying to find a happy medium. But number one was CX, number two was compliance in this thing. And one of the ways that we were successful was involving them in the design process. We got them into so that we could find middle ground along the way versus throwing them our big crown jewel at the end and having them slash and burn it. But we did quickly find that they were getting on board because we were able to automate a lot of the processes that they were involved with. So we have some of the most strict restrictions on what we do to vet a client. Even doing it in duplicate sometimes. Roll my eyes a little bit. So KYC, AML, suitability, license check for insurance licenses, FCC, state regs. Those are all things that cause a lot of heartburn when processing insurance. And we were able to automate those with Uncork through integrating through either our systems or third parties to where that was done at a real-time basis. As the client's progressing through the application, we're capturing and feeding that in and getting real-time results. If they're all good, the client just goes through. If there's an exception, it gets routed to the right dashboard, which I'll talk about in a sec. But we don't stop the client along that journey. We don't say, hey, wait for a compliance officer to get back to you or call you. They keep going. And if it's a hard stop, then we have to get in touch with them. But if not, if it can be resolved, the client has no sort of interruption to that process. So talking about quality, you're reducing human error on the compliance side. You're making it super fast, and you're making people can stop doing that job and do something else, right? So quickly we made friends there, and it took some time to prove out, but it's a model that we're actually using in other areas of the firm. Speaking of the dashboard component, we also tried to make it easy on the exception side, and so we early days implemented workflow within Uncork. So as we encountered exceptions, they were routed to either, depending on the actor involved, we have a compliance-specific dashboard, lists the issues that had popped up, nice green bubbles, green, yellow, red, and then were routed to the right people. And as they went through that gate, it would go to the next person. So it was early days workflow. I'm looking forward to seeing some of the new stuff coming out in the form of case management that I saw today. But we have, we made it really easy for them to do their job. The other thing I want to just talk about real quick, kind of related to compliance, was security. That was another sort of skeptical group with, Uncork being a cloud. Us with insurance applications, you're dealing with the highest level of PII that you can possibly have for a person, including like medical conditions, things of that nature. We were able to get them approved from a data perspective to pass and store client PII within Uncork, which was like monumental for our team. And when I say like tech risk scrutiny on onboarding is hard at our company, I don't care what any of you say, it's harder. It's harder. So that was, they did a lot of work to harden up the application. And so that was another big hurdle that we were able to get through. So yeah, I mean, both hurdles, but we got through them, and it really actually improved the lives of a lot of people at the end of the day.
Yeah, and that's what I'm going to be quoting now to my teams.
So I guess the follow-up question is, do you miss the time you spent with information security, compliance, or do you have new friends?
They like me a lot more, but I haven't gotten away from them.
Excellent. So it sounds like many of you, all of you actually have had a lot of experience now on the platform. So if you could give advice to the, if you know what you know now, what advice would you give to others? Or if you could go back in time to when you first started on the platform, what advice would you give them, or yourself or others?
I think we hit on a few of the points already between us. Number one, for me, like involve compliance early. Number two, I think pick an impactful area, and you talked about advisor adoption. There's nothing that's going to make the application more successful than your advisor singing the praises of it. So if you can pick something, if you're just starting, pick something impactful. They can get quick wins, but also has a lot of business value associated to it. So show the speed to market, get advisors adopting it as fast as possible. That'll build momentum, and really think about Uncork not as like a standalone thing, but something that is super easy to integrate into your enterprise. It doesn't need to, in some cases it can replace, other cases it just allows us to use the systems that we have that do really well at what they do and have Uncork sort of connect the dots on it. So those are my key things.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to that, I'd say lean in on the time to value. How can you, I think Uncork the platform gives a lot of opportunity for whether you're in the business, whether you're in product, whether you're in kind of tech, to really show value to your users quickly. And I think that's something that we learned in a semi-hard way, right? Which is, hey, look, there's all these capabilities. Let's do something awesome, And I think, if we were to do it again, maybe we'd say, hey, what are some simple flows we can do that we can show value quickly and iterate from there. I think the second part I'd say is around, play to the strengths of the platform. I think one of the strengths of the platform is its ability to give you agility, to be able to be closer to what the problem is, closer to what your users need, and use that to your advantage, right? So rather than being, have a million Jira stories or whatever, user stories. Maybe it's more, being able to sit down and collaboratively configure a page together and get some real-time feedback and do that together. I think that would be something I would recommend. And then third, I think is actually I guess it's the same as two, but it's lean in on bring your users in faster. You're going to be able to show more working stuff faster. You're not going to have to necessarily put together a whole Figma wireframe, a whole prototype. You can kind of do it with them. And I think that gives you a lot of agility. It gives you a lot of credibility from a product development perspective, and that really helps drive things forward.
Yeah, and I think. I just came off of another session where, they just showed a demo of building a whole ESG app in 20 minutes, and I remember maybe a year or 2 years ago when I got a similar demo of Uncork, and I'm sure all of you guys have seen similar things as well, right? You go to one of these sessions, you see the demo, you're very energized, so you bring it back to your team, and look, there's this great tool and crickets, right? So there's a lot of reasons I think. I think as an organization exists where you're going to find friction in trying to bring in a tool because it is disruptive, and disruptive change, right, sometimes takes time, and it can be hard. So I think kind of bringing the right people along for the journey, I think, is definitely super helpful. I think learning to do that demo can really help. I think it's. They say picture is worth 1,000 words, and a demo is probably worth 1,000 pictures. So I think that's really how we've kind of started to move that needle internally a little bit, just one person at a time or one group at a time. And over time, I think once enough people have kind of seen it and understand it and start regurgitating the same ideas, I think you start to see a tangible change in the organization. So I think sort of going slow and bringing the right people along for the ride, I think, has been super helpful.
So I hope the audience has done your homework. This is now a time for you guys to ask this panel questions. Is there anything that is top of mind for the group?
Beer.
Can you talk a little bit about digital adoption, both of the members of your client-facing teams as well as your individual clients?
Thank you.
Yeah, for adoption is a struggle, like within our group, proving it, right? So, but we did our application was a little different because we weren't doing term life at scale. So we had a whole different audience to serve to. But we went out and did an extreme amount of demos, road shows, everything that you can think of with the advisor community, right? So getting them involved throughout the process, getting them excited about it, and really showing and proving that it does what we say it's going to do. And also being able to collect feedback quickly, like he mentioned. So, in terms of that, like the advisors are the conduit to our client and our business. So that was like the key focus for us. We're trying to branch out a little bit beyond just our advisor-based business now. So I don't have good answers there yet, but more of like a little bit direct-to-consumer is our next goal. So we're just kind of creating plans around that now.
Yeah, can you talk just a little bit about any one of you or all of you around how you embrace the challenge of maintaining velocity of, let me move the button here, right? Because you can do that really fast. Or let me add a decision or one more step that we missed. But once you get to production, well, how do you keep track of how many things changed when you thought you were just moving a button, right? And how you embrace that, kind of back to that compliance, but that change control scenario and perhaps that perceived risk there.
I guess I'll start there. I mean, I'd say that being able to move the button is a bit of a party trick, right? Like it's nice, but that's not really the heart of it. I think part of what we've observed is you still need to have a good SDLC process. You still have to have the necessary controls, and you still need to have, is this application configured nicely? Is it configured in a way that's durable and all that kind of stuff? Like I think some of those SDLC processes still apply, but I think what we've observed is that when you're thinking about those, so it's not so much I can move a button willy-nilly. It's more about when we are talking to our users, when we're talking to the people that we're trying to provide value to, we can actually coordinate what that screen needs to look like, quickly, and then have confidence that the platform will handle changes in the future. So an example would be, hey, I got these buttons to do certain things. I want to change the behavior of that. I'm reasonably comfortable through the tools that Encore provides that my other stuff is reasonably durable. And I kind of and you kind of understand that going into the platform if you stay on the rails, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think another dimension of it, I think that we've seen is when you kind of get something live, right, and you start building these apps, and more people are building these apps, like how do you really handle the maintenance of this thing at scale? it could be some small changes like buttons, or there could be some bigger things. And I think that's one thing that's been interesting to figure out, right? Because either you could keep adding people to your team to be able to do that really quickly. I think that kind of hits the same challenges as having a limited technology budget. You could kind of open it up for people to kind of do it more. But there's different parts of the app ownership, right? Even changing something in a button, is it just a visual thing? Are we changing the endpoint that it's connecting to? Is it right the service itself that it's ultimately talking to changing? So there's like different levels of change that happens, and I think we've tried to kind of categorize and define right what change happens and who it kind of takes on. But the reality is you do sacrifice some agility to have a controlled process, right? So of course you can make those changes very, very quickly. But I think if you want to be sustainable, sometimes you do have to introduce some of those controls and processes. You do sacrifice some agility for it, but I think you end up with a bit more sustainable process overall in the end.
Yeah, I would agree. We folded it right into our normal SDLC process from a production management standpoint. The middle part is much faster, but we still go through like all the same sort of change control that we do with other applications.
Or someone from here.
So we heard a lot of good use cases like customer onboarding, reaching more customers by going direct to consumer, hitting on the point of digital advice. So what upcoming trends happening in the wealth management space, like fractional trading, direct indexing, customizing ESG for participants, do you see these tools helping you reach in the future?
Well, you named all the trends, so A+ to you for a lot of the big trends. I'd say certainly for us, when we talk about client onboarding, and if you think about client onboarding, it's a really obviously a broad category. You can think about, proposal generation, portfolio construction, asset onboarding. There's so many different components of it. One of the things I'll touch on is direct indexing, right? And we think that direct indexing can be part, and even the whole ESG preferences can be part of that portfolio construction process. I think we're looking at saying, hey, how can we extend some of the client onboarding processes we have today to incorporate some of those elements? We think that really speaks to that theme I was talking about investor personalization, giving advisors more optionality to be able to offer these kind of products to our clients.
Yeah, I think with and with the newer trends, I think it's definitely a great area to focus, right? I think in some places like client onboarding or other things, I think you often see like lots of ongoing investment. I think it's sometimes hard to kind of intercept or change course hard if there's already like a lot of active investment going on in that area. There's sometimes hard to kind of build half here, half there. But I think these new trends are really a great place to kind of look at. I think in asset management, we are building something, in partnership with KPMG on the ESG space. And that's been, a great opportunity because this is something new, and everyone, is building new assets and applications around it. And there's a lot of agility we can kind of achieve from it. So I think generally, with some of these newer trends, they tend to be hotspot areas where, you can look at stuff, right? Other examples probably are, we're doing a lot of like acquisitions and stuff. So if you're bringing in a new firm and, they have their process and, that process doesn't exist in the firm currently and you have to set something up net new, like I think that's a great opportunity to try to do something with an uncork because there isn't a ton of ongoing velocity of change happening. So I think it's a really interesting segment to target with a tool like this.
Curious to know what your release cycles are with the agility that allow for us to do this, and I guess your decision behind it as well.
I'd say a lot of times with the release cycles, it's a function of change management with your users as much as it is like the actual deployment of the software, and I think that I think for us, I'd say that as a service provider to wealth management firms, a lot of that is trying to figure out what that cadence should be, because advisors don't want things to change every week, every month, and so I think for where we've used Uncork, I think for where we're using, it's about a quarterly cycle, and then we'll have UAT processes in between.
I didn't answer because ours is not very standardized. It's more, we plan our releases, we probably do around 3 a year, but it's usually kind of a feature-based release that we plan according to, what fits within like the business calendar. So it's not like we have like a set time frame that we do that, but similarly, it's generally framed around change management. What's going on in the business at that time? Do they have the ability to absorb it? And then, like I said, the actual production release part of it, that just kind of flows through our normal process.
And yeah, same for us. I think it just varies, right? I think we have a number of apps that are already live, and they vary in size and complexity, right? Some of them are very simple, like replacing SharePoints, where a few people have to collaborate on a few tasks, right, end to end, and there might not be a lot of impact to underlying technologies and things of that nature. You can have a much faster release cycle there because the parties involved and the size and scale of the application is much smaller. So I don't think we have a one-size-fits-all. We generally tend to agree on that on a per use case basis, on what works best based on the application. So it generally varies, I would say.
Thank you all, and
you,
thank you all
everyone.
for attending.